afternoon, everybody. So, my kids, my youngest two, my 5 and my 7-year-old, Gabe and Rowan, they are off at their dad's house. And, I had them for 3 weeks, and we went down to the beach, and we went up into the Ozarks, and we hiked, and we horseback rode, and we had, barbecue dinner underneath the stars on the ocean, and now there's a plane flying over. So did all this kind of stuff, and I just did not manage to get a whole bunch of conscious coffees done, articles written. I was so far behind on all my client even follow-up and everything, and I was like, it's all because Gabe and Rowan's here. Once Gabe and Rowan go to Daddy's house, I'm going to just totally be on top of my shit, and everything's going to be fine. And then they went over to Daddy's house last Friday, and I completely dropped the ball. Little did I realize how busy I actually am. This massive client stuff and workshops, and this 3 weeks is just jam-packed. Anybody who knows my schedule can definitely attest to how busy I have been. And yesterday, my second oldest daughter, she turned 23. I was sitting there and I was doing the math, and I'm like, is she really 23? And oh my God, does that really mean that I'm 44? Almost. In a month from now, I'll be 44. But yeah, so just tons and tons of go-go. And in the midst of all of this going, there has been some very interesting observations coming up. And I am going to try to get my musing out today on this topic as well. So I want to cover a little bit as to that cycle of trigger. And what is a trigger? Trigger is something that we get triggered by something. Somebody says something, we smell something, something happens, a song comes on, we have these moments that triggers a feeling, a thought of the past. Sometimes it can be positive, sometimes it can be negative. And it triggers this old sensation, this old memory, this old thought. And it rises it to the surface and makes it as though it is happening in that moment almost. We see triggers happen a lot with rape victims, rape survivors, where all of a sudden, and as somebody who has experienced rape in her past, I can tell you that this is real deal stuff. There are, smell is definitely something that can get to you. I have one person that he smells exactly the same as the man who raped me, and even though he is the nicest person, and total sweetheart, this guy, not the guy that raped me, but the guy who smells like my rapist, like that. Every time I'm around him, he wants to give me a hug, and when he gives me a hug, I have to just hold my breath because it causes so much anxiety inside of my body, and I want to just run the other direction, all because his scent is so similar, if not almost the same as the scent of the man who raped me many years back, So it's like, that's a triggering experience, and to be able to stand and breathe into it. And so we have these triggers, and we have them around good things, like sometimes a love song comes on, right? And you're with your partner, and it's like, oh, that's our song. And it's just like, oh, yeah. And we're just like, we love those songs, and because it triggers feel-good feelings, it triggers love, it triggers romance, it triggers just joy inside of us. Other things trigger not such pleasant things, like, the smell that I shared with you there. So it's interesting, in the midst of all this go-go, yesterday we're out to girls' brunch, and 3 years ago, I broke up with a man that our relationship the universe just separated us. It wasn't a bad breakup. It wasn't never breakup that was somebody that you love deeply. Definitely is never a good feeling thing, but it was definitely a spiritual separation that occurred for us. And this, I definitely have these moments where I feel like he's almost haunting me. And when I say that he's haunting me, it is because of triggers. And so yesterday we're at brunch, and we're enjoying drinks and laughter, and there's like 8-9 of us there, and we're talking, and all us girls, and it's all for my daughter's 23rd birthday. It's girls' brunch for her 23rd birthday. And we're just going on and on. It's just a fun, loving, connected. Oh my goodness. And I forgot to turn that off. Sorry, guys. I never do that, and today I did that. Oh well. So taken care of now. But there we are, we're laughing and we're enjoying and everything, and I hear my daughter say this name, which is the man that I separated from, that, you know, I have massive, like, I would say out of all my relationships, that was probably the deepest heart-centered relationship that I have experienced. And now I'm like working on reopening my heart so that I can love like that again. But you know, it was just like we were just so connected, and emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, from that heart center, and it was just like we were really resonating. So his name was brought up at the table. Little did my daughter realize what she was saying when she was bringing his name up at the table, but she's bringing his name up over and over, and I'm just trying to ignore it. But her and a close friend of hers, they're going back and forth and like bantering, and they're making jokes with this name. I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? So I tune in, and I'm just like not understanding at all, still not understanding as to what they're talking about. And I was like, I didn't get it. And then all of a sudden my daughter says, she has this little dude, this little guy that's hanging on her glass. He's got his hands up like this, and he's hanging on the outside of her glass. And she refers to this little rubber guy that's hanging from her glass by the name. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I don't know why is the universe like using this name? Like, I'm not even thinking about this person. I'm not having any feelings in that. Like, I really feel like over the last 3-4 months, I've really like healed this aspect of self. And I'm like so excited, and this weight has been lifted off, and I'm just like, woo. And I'm feeling so much more open and everything. And she's just going on and on and on about this little guy. And it was just like this topic. And it felt like, you know, probably was only happening for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. It felt like an eternity to me, because I did not want to hear the name, because it was kept causing me to go into reminiscing, go into a feeling of loss, go into the feelings of love that I desire to experience, these things that I desire to experience, this openness that I desire to experience, this all of this expansion that I had with him, and this experience I had with him, and how I want it so bad again. And I know that I'm holding myself back, and I'm just getting triggered and triggered and triggered and triggered. Every single time they said the name, I was triggered. And then she rolls her cup around and she goes, da, 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 and I see on this guy, he's in like swim pants, and on the back of his butt it has his name, and sure enough, it's the name, right? And so they're like, oh, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting, like that. And Addison was there, and I looked at her, and I was just like, because she knows my history, she knows my story, right? And I was like, so she knew I was probably getting triggered and everything. I was getting triggered over and over again. And there was like good and bad in that trigger. Good and bad. And it was very, very interesting. Well, lo and behold, I'm like, I let that shit go. I'm like, okay, well, that was yesterday morning, right? That's fine. That's great. Whatever. So I get up this morning, and of course I decide to put on a dress that he purchased for me a few years back. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go put on one of my favorite Tommy Bahama dresses, and da 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 da. And it's a perfect dress for today, and it's a perfect feeling, and it's soft, and I love Tommy Bahama stuff. But so I go and I put on this Tommy Bahama dress, and I didn't even really have that much emotion toward the dress, other than it's one of my favorite dresses. It's a dress that makes me feel good. It feels good on my skin and everything. Put it on. I go to my ex, my kid's dad, and we're out school shopping and everything. And then somebody we're in the school area and everything, and somebody there is talking to her husband, who has the same name, right? So she's like, hey, honey, and he's not listening. So she starts saying his name repeatedly right next to me, and it was going, okay. So that goes on. I'm just like, whatever, that's just residue from yesterday. It's okay, just keep going. But I felt this like trigger, right? And then on and on. And then we go through, and we were in Target, and we walk out of Target, and you know how Targets have the little wine section in the front of the store? So we're checked out, and we leave the wine section. And, well, we don't leave the wine section. We're walking past the wine section to leave the store, you know, like that. And I got the boys' hands and a couple things, and we're just leaving, and we're talking. And as we walk by, the guy who works at the wine selection, I guess he knows my ex, right, my kid's dad, because he goes, hey, Scott, how are you? Like that. And I looked at him, and I don't recognize him. I'm like, this isn't a guy that we used to know together, so this must be somebody that he knows now. So maybe he buys wine at Target frequently. I don't know. Whatever. But the guy says his name, and he's like, oh, hey. And he's like, how you guys doing? And having a good night? Having a good day? And Scott's like, yeah, having a good day. It's all good. Just out school shopping, blah, blah. So they have that little exchange, which made it where I stopped and right there in front of the wine store, because I typically would not purchasing wine. I'm going to the car. I have things to get done, right? Kiss my kids goodbye, and I'm gone for the day. But instead, I stop in front of this there because I have the kids' hands. They're going with Daddy. Dad's having a conversation with this guy. And as soon as they get done talking, doing their little exchange, it becomes still, just still enough for me to hear the song that's playing. And lo and behold, the person that I'm talking about, his last name is Jones. And so Mr. Jones is playing nice and loud in the wine section of Target there. And it comes on, and I just started busting up laughing. I was just like, oh my God, there we go. Like, now Mr. Jones is playing. I was like, what the heck? Why? Like, I'm like, he must be thinking about me or something, because there's some energy coming. Now, I share that with you guys because names can be a trigger, okay? Names can be a trigger. Songs can be a trigger. Those things, and they bring up so much different, energy inside of us. And they make us feel good. They make us feel bad. They pull up old traumas. And sometimes we get triggered, or our partners will trigger us, or our friends will trigger us, our family, even our children, not meaning to. The other day, my current partner, Steve and I, we were in bed, and he says something to me, and I'm actually going to write an article on this, so you're going to have to read the article for the full version of it. But he says something to me that is supposed to be a compliment around our sex. And the way he said it triggered me to a wound that occurred probably 4 years ago or so. And it brought me into this moment with my children's dad, where he had said something that was very similar, and it was a very negative moment between the two of us, where I actually ended up getting, not intentionally physically hurt, but I was physically hurt, and I felt kind of used in that moment, and it was around our sex and his statement. And I hear now, like, I can understand, even in that moment, I can understand he's trying to pay me a compliment, but that compliment was, and all right, well, I'll just tell you, like, so my current guy, he says to me yesterday morning, and during this conversation, he says, well, because I was telling him that my article title that I want to write is that my boyfriend would be considered a sex addict if anybody else was his girlfriend, and he looks at me and says, well, if you slept with you, you'd be a sex addict too. And somehow that comment, which he's trying to say, well, you're amazing, you're this, you're that, I get all that, but that comment was like, well, it's your fault that I want it so much. It's your fault here. And I felt that, even though I don't really think that, that's what kind of came up inside of me. And it triggered me back to this moment when Scott, even years ago, we were having this moment, and he became like a 2-pump chump in this second of our sex, and it was like a second of our sex, and and things were moving kind of fast and furious, you could say, in this moment. And he came really quickly, and then he looks at me and he says, well, if you weren't so hot, that wouldn't happen. And again, that was like that moment where here I was actually, because it happened really quick, and I wasn't prepared for even the sex aspect and all that kind of stuff, so my body didn't have rev up time, so I was like physically not feeling good about it. And then I was like, it just like petered out, no pun intended, but right, petered out really, really quickly. And he kicked the blame to me. He kicked it to me, saying, well, if you weren't this way, then that wouldn't happen. And that created a negative wound around that. And there's many, many times that I know us women do experience those moments where our partners especially will say something to us that is supposed to be a compliment, but it triggers a wound around, you're too much, you're not good enough, if you weren't doing this, then I wouldn't do that, which puts us into the aspect of being responsible for the other person's actions, which makes that other person a victim to us, even though we're just being us, right? So like in sex, it is one of those things of you're just being you. Hopefully you are, right? Or even if you're putting on a show, you're still like that. You're just being you. And then your partner says, oh, well, if you weren't, if you didn't look like that, if the candlelight didn't hit your skin like that, if you didn't feel like that, if you didn't make that noise, if you didn't go, then I wouldn't be a two-pump chump. Yeah. And I have this right now across the board with a whole bunch of people that I know that I'm hearing this where, I'm sorry, gentlemen, you guys are telling your women that it is her fault that you're experiencing, right? And the things that you're experiencing, it's her fault that you're not lasting long enough in bed. It's her fault that you want more sex from her than what she's wanting to give or willing to give. It's her fault. If she didn't look this way, if she didn't act this way, if she didn't smell this way, if she didn't feel this way, then it's her fault. And it's meant, I'm sure, with all the best intent of being a compliment. But I can tell you, and ladies, we're not off the hook here because we do similar things. I'm just speaking from very recent experience to share. So please look at the things that you're saying to your partners, whether you're male or female, your partner is male or female. It's really important to just pay attention to some of those perceived compliments that we're giving to our partners, and when we don't really get the reactions that we're anticipating, when, so in other words, there's retraction where they pull back, or maybe they cop attitude, they get negative, something's going on, that means that your compliment was not received as a compliment, that it actually triggered potentially an old wound or trauma that's back there, and it brought up the feeling of, oh, now I'm responsible for this, and now, oh, this is just, I am too much, I am not good enough, I'm this, I'm that, all that kind of stuff, okay? So it's like really definitely make sure that you're paying attention to those things that you were saying, because sometimes compliments can actually trigger wounds. Sometimes when we say a compliment, if we are saying something like, well, if you weren't so hot, I wouldn't have come so quick. If you weren't like this, then I wouldn't, push you so much for this. Then what that is doing is that's taking us out of our power when we say things like that, okay? So maybe we're making a compliment, but what we're actually doing is we're taking ourselves out of our own power in that moment, and we're laying blame on the other person. We're creating a victim in ourselves, and we are making now the person that we're trying to pay a compliment the persecutor in that section. In that second, we're telling them that if they were different, then we would be able to be stronger. If they were different, then we would be able to hold out longer. If they were different, then we would, like that. And here's the thing: do you really want your partner to be different? Probably not, right? So if we take the basic masculine feminine here, typically men love the fact that their women are sexy and turn them on and make them crave sex, or that they feel good and all that kind of stuff. But if you start telling her that it is her fault and that you are coming too quick, it's her fault that you can't control your desire level and you're trying to push her for more sex than what she's wanting or willing to give, or even physically, emotionally can give, then what you're doing is you're asking her to change. So don't be shocked when she shuts her shit down, when she stops shining as bright, because she gets terrified inside because she's been told all her life that she is responsible for the way men think, the way men act. Women get told that. We are consistently told that we are responsible for the way guys are, for the thoughts you men think, for the feelings you have, for the actions you have. And every single woman believes that if she gets raped, molested, or anything like that, any sexual offense happens to her, she initially feels at her core that it is her fault for just being a woman. Okay? And that's sad. That is sad. But when we pay such compliments, we are triggering those wounds, those teachings that women are taught at that level. Now, there are other teachings that men are taught that men and women trigger towards men as well. Okay? So I really want you to look at those things that you're saying, those compliments that you're paying. I want you to pay more, be consciously aware, pay attention to the way your partner is acting, so you can see how they are actually receiving said compliment. Okay? And then it's about having authentic conversations, because the end of my tale to you guys is that Steve and I sat there in bed And I didn't just suck in his statement. I could see that he's trying to pay me a compliment, but I had to own the fact that I had been triggered, because it's not his fault that I got triggered. It's not my fault that I got triggered. It's nobody's fault that the trigger even happened. But I had to own the fact that I had all this emotion coming up around that trigger. And in taking responsibility for the emotion that I was feeling, for the thought loop that I got caught up in, I actually regained my own power. And I was able to communicate with him authentically, to share with him, hey, I know that you didn't mean any harm by this, but that was a really triggering statement to me. And here's why. Here's the loop that I went on. And I know you didn't even know that piece of my history. So it's not like you sat there intentionally trying to do this. And I explained that to him. I was like, I know that that's not an intention of yours, but I need to share with you that that was a triggering statement to me. And here's the loop that it sent me on. And here's my little tale. And I need a moment to breathe. I need a moment to breathe. And he said, well, I'm never going to say that statement again. I'm like, that's not what I'm telling you it for. I'm telling you it for because I need to get this clear it, and I need to be honest, because you're going to feel retraction from me for a moment here. You're going to feel me kind of go boom boom in my energy. I'm not going to be where I just was, and it's going to take me a moment to recover from this hurdle that I've got to jump. And that's all it is. But it is the ownership of I just got triggered. And when we own it, and that power that we embrace with that ownership, here's what we do. We circumvent a lot of miscommunication. We get to change the communication line. So where we would typically start finger pointing toward the person that triggered us and blaming them, and end up in this nasty battle, a blame game back and forth of, well, you said, blah, 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 and all that stuff, which is where a lot of arguments, a lot of miscommunication comes from, is because of triggers that are misunderstood and nobody's owning, because nobody's speaking, because nobody actually slows the fuck down enough to go, whoa, I just got triggered. I just came up inside of me. I need to authentically share this with you. And I'm not blaming you. I'm just sharing it so that you know where I'm at, because I need a moment to breathe. And that's it. And that is truly, truly it. So, hold on. Something just... Oh, it's a little bird. I want you to really look at those moments in your life. I want you to start paying attention to when you do feel triggered. I want you to notice how compliments or statements are received by the person that you're giving to them. The more consciously aware that you can become in your communication, in your statements, and how things are stated, the better off you're going to be. I'm going to leave you on this note. You know, I have 7 children, right? I have 7 children. I'm 44 years old. Now, granted, you know, yeah, I could look younger. I could be more fit. I could do this. I could do that. But one statement that has bugged me since I was about 23 years old and had 3 children at that point. I think it was 3 children at 23. Whatever. I'm not great at math. We all know that. So, I used to get, and I still do get, wow, you look really great for having kids. That's a compliment, right? Wow, you look really great for having kids. And I used to, even in my 20s, you know, 10 pounds lighter than what I am today, and 4 kids less. And I used to think to myself, I know that's supposed to be a compliment, but is that some sort of fucking smack in the face or what? Because what you're saying, in truth, is, well, thank God you have kids, because if you didn't have kids, you'd look like shit. Wow, you look really great for having kids. Yeah. My point of this conscious coffee is words do matter. They may not always teach, but they do matter. And often we make compliments that are just backhanded slaps to the people that we love. We're trying to be nice, and in turn what we're actually saying is something really vicious. Something that is actually very condemning to the person and can pull up a whole bunch of emotion. If somebody has body image issues, which FYI, almost everybody does, and every woman most certainly does, and every mother definitely does. You know, things change after you have a baby. So if you have a friend that is a mother, don't tell her, wow, you look really good for having kids. Instead, just say, wow, you look amazing today. You look beautiful. I love that dress on you. Because when you say such things as, wow, you look really great for having kids, you're actually saying something else that isn't so nice. Compliments, traumas, body image, shame, taking responsibility, yes, for the triggers. Don't jump out and bite somebody's throat just because they made a uh-oh statement and didn't even realize it. But take responsibility also for the words that you're saying. Be conscious enough to actually think through the statements before speaking it. And think about, how would I feel if that was said to me? Okay, guys, on that note, I'm going to jump off of here. I'm going to see if I can get a musing done. Addison and I have 2 more weekends of workshops coming up. So we've got not winter wonderlands. Oh my God, I need the cold. That's the truth of the matter. I need like a cool day. We have summer orgasm camp coming up August 8th. And this Saturday we have the Cock Connective coming up, which is a men's group where we are talking about masculinity, leadership, purpose, connecting the two heads. Yes, it is about cock consciousness, as I like to call it. It's about getting centered in self, gentlemen. And this is a male workshop that is all about really embracing your power as a man, becoming conscious, learning how to resonate better with the feminine, and knowing yourself at a deep level. And then the following week, we have another beautiful workshop focused on female sexuality, which is, I think, 10th year running for our summer orgasm camp, where we are teaching all on female sexuality, everything possible that you can imagine. And yeah, it is open to women and men, couples and singles. Cock Connective is open to only men. Single, married, we don't care. It is just some fantastic stuff. So look in the comment section. If you are local, then we have a few seats left. These classes are small because of COVID. We have shrunk down our class size. We have also changed locations. So make sure if you are signed up in your kitchens that you have the new address for that. If you have not signed up for it, know that there are limited seats. There are no at the doors for workshops this season, unfortunately. But both of these workshops will also be available for a live stream. That means that no matter where you're at in the United States or world for that matter, if you follow me and you just got that and you want to participate in one of these workshops, we are live streaming both of these workshops so that they can come to you this year, so that we are really just kind of opening up our spectrum and trying out new class varieties for you guys. So make sure that you click on the links for what you are interested in, sign up, get registered ASAP, and remember, you're worthy. You're worthy of a dynamic relationship. You're worthy of authentic relating. And you're worthy of really taking responsibility for your emotions, because you are the creator of your world. You are the creator of what you feel, and how you feel about things is what manifests the life that you want or that you don't want. So, okay. Stop existing. Start living. I will catch you tomorrow with another Conscious Coffee. Bye, everybody.